The gut hypertension connection is now considered the single most important factor in hypertension. So how healthy your gut is can have a big impact directly and indirectly on your level of hypertension. It's the single biggest factor in there. So what we want to do is work on understanding it and then take steps to be able to fix it. So over the last 10 years, so it's very, very recent in scientific terms, over the last 10 years, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies showing this link from one direction or another. Now, it does take about 20 years before it filters through to the medical system, so you'll be at the forefront of all this research. And essentially what it shows is you've got a state of gut dysbiosis, which is when the microbiome in your large intestine, which is the one that goes up here, across here, and down here, when it's in a state of disbalance. So it's out of balance, with some species being too high and other species, the good ones, not being as high and down low. And it's got 100 trillion microorganisms in there, and they're all competing for a bit of space and territory and real estate. But what's happening is the ones that are causing hypertension are a little bit increased, and the ones that protect against hypertension are decreased. And I'll show you the names of some of those in a moment. But what we also see is that in animal experiments and human experiments, if you've got gut dysbiosis, then you are much more likely to have hypertension, and by the way, a huge array of other illnesses. That's what's great about this program, is that once you get onto it, it really does help you with just about every other form of chronic illness as well. So not just dealing with one little aspect of high blood pressure. But what happens, the experiments show that gut dysbiosis leads to an increased risk of developing hypertension, but also severity. And in the reverse of that, by fixing the dysbiosis, you lower your risk of developing it, and, you ready? And you lower your blood pressure as well. It's a win-win situation. And what happens in gut dysbiosis is you end up with something called leaky gut, or a permeable membrane, where some of the toxins from some of the not so friendly microorganisms in the gut leak into the blood and cause inflammation, cause oxidation, and cause a cascade of metabolic imbalances where literally it forces the blood pressure to go up. What we also know is that when you've got leaky gut, that all of the conditions for blood pressure are increased, and if you fix it, all of them are decreased. So what we've got here, and one of the simplest ways to do that is fiber. That's how simple this can be. Now, in the research on fiber alone, so just adding fiber to people's diet, it lowers the risk of developing hypertension by about 12 to 15%. So that's pretty good if you think about it. And all it is a couple of spoons of fiber. And all you've got to do is remember that about 70% of the population don't get enough fiber. So what do? You add in some fiber, you add in mixed fibers, you add foods with lots more fiber in it. So here's a bit of a call to arms, get more fiber. My favorite fiber obviously is K fiber, and then I like a mix, but I don't like one type of fiber, e.g. psyllium, especially when it's got food additives and colors and flavors, which ultimately poison the gut as well at the same time. So it's not a very good win situation with that one. But a mix of fibers mixed in with the K fiber. And what that does is it produces the short chain fatty acids. And these short chain fatty acids directly decrease blood pressure. The three main ones, butyrate, acetate, and propionate, have all been shown to lower blood pressure, but the winner by far is butyrate. So altogether they lower blood pressure, but butyrate on its own is now used as a supplement directly to lower blood pressure. And it lowers blood pressure by about 6 or 7 millimeters of mercury. Now, when I say these numbers, like 6 or 7, what you've got to understand is that's an average. So for people who have just a little bit in excess of high blood pressure, their blood pressure may decrease by 2, and one with a lot of blood pressure, high blood pressure, might decrease by even 15 or 20 millimeters of mercury. So they're averages. So if you've got really high blood pressure, fiber may make a huge difference in terms of what you're doing, and the other things I'm talking about as well. And so we've got the short chain fatty acids. And there are lots of other chemicals produced as a byproduct of the fiber and the fermentation of good nutrients, like all the polyphenols, the turmeric and all the good things you get in veggies. And they produce a whole raft of chemicals in the body, in the gut, called hormones. Now, you've all heard of hormones, testosterone and estrogen, progesterone, but these ones are hormones that affect the way we act, think, feel, behave, and are also how our digestive system works. For example, dopamine, norepinephrine, which is also called noradrenaline, serotonin, which is a happier kind of neurotransmitter, and melatonin, the sleep. But it's not just sleep, by the way. It has so many benefits. And so it produces these hormones and other chemicals, which in the process, you've probably heard of this called the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis is how your brain and your nervous system is linked to your gut and how they talk to the brain and from the brain back to the gut. And in the process of doing that, it can alter stress, anxiety, your ability to relax and be calm, all of those things which alter hypertension. So through the gut-brain axis, it can alter all of these factors which are linked to hypertension. So on the other side, we've got all the chemicals going on. And over here, we've got the processes through stress, anxiety, and ability to relax. And then you've also got its impact on digestion. Because the healthier your digestion, the healthier your large intestine, the healthier the microbiome, the lower the risk of hypertension. So if we've got all this as a bit of a background understanding, we then get to how effective are supplements for, other than fiber, of course, and the other ones that fix the gut, for lowering hypertension. And we see that there are two primary species that show up in the research literature. And this is the lactobacillus. And here they use 2 or 3 different species of lactobacillus, Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus helveticus. And these are mixed up in probiotic supplements already. So you can get those pre-purchased, and there's no one definitive formula. All it says, all the research is suggesting that a couple of varieties of the lactobacillus and or bifidobacteria, which is another group of bacteria, and have that with that, and you look after all the other things with fiber and so on, then you will have a 7 to 8 millimeters of mercury decrease. Now that's average, remember, so you'll get some people at 20, you'll get some people at 1. So the great thing is this has so many benefits: improving digestion, reducing your risk of reflux, all those gut issues, at the same time as reducing your risk of heart attack, stroke, hypertension, and various forms of cancer too. It's a win-win-win situation. But the real, I suppose, the icing on the cake of explaining it is when they do what's called a washed microbiome transplant or a fecal transplant. And they grab poo. In the case of animal studies, they grab the poo from the mice, you ready, who have hypertension. So they create the hypertension in the mice. They then get the poo from the mice who have hypertension. They put it in the mice who don't have hypertension, a direct swap, and they develop hypertension. So those ones that didn't, just because of the poo swap, that's pretty stressful, I suppose, but that causes hypertension. When they put the poo from the mice who don't have hypertension, and they put it in mice who do have hypertension, it lowers their hypertension dramatically. That's what the studies show. So it's very, very clear cut. And of course, when they do human transplants, the same things occur in the studies. And while there's only been a small number of studies in that area, they've shown on average between 5 and 7 millimeters of mercury, 5 or 7 points drop in blood pressure as a result of fecal microbiome transplant, or what they call the washed microbiome transplant. So there is little doubt how important this gut hypertension connection is in terms of hypertension, and of course many other things. And the great thing is, once you start fixing this one, you start fixing so many other factors in there. So if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe down below, share it with other people, and let's get this message out, how simple it is to look after our own health. And we always start with the gut.